Hello, and welcome to part 3 of the Hail Caesar series. Today we're going to be looking at the non-creature, non-land cards that make up the original deck list of this Precon. Um, so we'll jump right on into that. Alright, so the first non-land card type that we're going to go through is the sorceries. And we got Heroic Reinforcements is a red-white 4-cost with create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens until end of turn. Creatures you control get +1/+1 and have haste. So 4 cost for creating 2 creatures gives mass haste and +1/+1. Not terrible. There's 4 costs that's drop 3 tokens, but they don't have haste. And that's the I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but it drops vampire tokens with lifelink. But this one gives the +1/+1 in haste. Overall, pretty solid. Not a bad option. Synergizes well with what we got over there for Caesar, with our token generation and group buffs, and haste allows you to not only play those creatures, but play them, give all creatures you control haste, and be able to swing with a greater volume on this turn. So overall, fantastic pick. Next sorcery is Ruinous Ultimatum. Is black, black, white, 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 red, red. It's a 7 cost. Sorcery, destroy all non-land permanents your opponents control. So it's essentially a in Garruk's Wake, except for it's all non-land permanents instead of all creatures. So very good card. Thing to keep in mind is the heavy devotion cost, meaning that it's all colored mana symbols and non-colorless, so that can be a little bit difficult to make sure that you have the right mana in order to be able to cast it, but it's a good pick. Next, we got Hour of Reckoning is a 7-cost white, white, white sorcery with Convoke, so you can tap a creature, an untapped creature that you control, and that creature will pay for 1 colorless of the spell's mana cost. Destroy all non-token creatures. So this will hit all non-token creatures, which means it's good for your deck, because your deck just creates a whole bunch of token creatures with your commander and some of your other legendaries. So that's pretty good board wipe. It's the second board wipe that we got in this deck. The third board wipe that we have in this deck is the Nipton Lottery. It's a red-black 2 4-cost sorcery. Choose a creature at random. You gain control of that creature until end of turn. Untap it. It gains haste until end of turn. And then destroy all other creatures. Important thing to note is that you gain control of this creature until end of turn. So if an opponent's creature is selected, you gain control of it, and then all other creatures are destroyed, but you only retain control of that creature until the end of your turn, at which point that creature goes back to your opponent, and your opponent has a creature and a pretty much completely clear lane of attack to any of his opponents. So that's something that can be situationally really beneficial or situationally really harmful. So you just got to be careful with that when you're using it. Martial Coup is a white, white X cost sorcery. Create X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. If X is 5 or more, destroy all other creatures. So all other creatures, that's other than these 1/1s that are being played. So if you were to play this and you had Caesar on field or anything else on field, it would destroy all of those. So that's something to keep in mind. Use it situationally. It's great to bail yourself out, but if you have a really strong board state and you play this, you might want to think about that because that would end up hitting your own board state too. Entrapment maneuver. Now we're moving on into the instance here. We got a 4-cost white. Target player sacrifices an attacking creature. You gain X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens, where X is that creature's toughness. So notice that it's attacking player, so they get to choose. It's not destroy target, so you can't be like, oh, he's attacking with a 8/8 or whatever. I'm gonna do this and get all those tokens. So in all likelihood, your opponent will sacrifice their least valuable creature. So you might not get as much bang for your buck as that one as it might look like for that one. It's a good card. I would possibly consider replacing it with something that's a little bit more efficient and perhaps a little bit less mana spendy, but still decent card. I understand why it was picked and why they put it in here. Definitely synergizes with Caesar. We got a 4-cost black instant with Convoke. We already went over what Convoke was. Destroy target creature or planeswalker. Each creature that convoked lethal scheme connives. So when you connive, you draw a card and then discard a card. If you discarded a non-land card, you put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So you draw a card, discard a card, and if you discard non-land, put a 1/1 counter on a creature. So it's a very interesting card because it gives you, it allows you to ramp into itself. Notice you can only do it twice. So each creature you tap while you're casting it allows you to pay for 1 colorless. Well, you only got 2 colorless up here. And so you can't pay or connive to get one of your, use Convoke to pay off one of your black mana symbols there. So you're going to pay at least black, and you're not going to be able to Convoke with more than 2 creatures. So you'll be able to draw up to, well, you'll be able to do this twice, where you draw a card, discard a card, and then put a counter if it's a non-land card that you discarded. So that's just something to keep in mind. It looks really good, and it definitely is very solid, but it's not quite as good as it might appear right off the bat at first. I would say it definitely has a place in this deck. It's a 2-cost control that allows you to put counters and draw cards and discard and do a whole bunch of great things. It definitely has synergy with what we're doing in Caesar, because we had a bunch of creatures in the last video that dealt with 1/1 counters. And this is very solid card draw. So again, solid card. Good addition to the deck, I think. Deadly Dispute is a 2-cost black. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact or a creature. Draw 2 cards and create a treasure token. So we got some card drop, we got some mana ramp, so ultimately you're essentially paying 1 because you're getting that treasure token as a refund here. To pay 1, sacrifice a creature to draw 2 cards, and then you can gain an extra mana to use whenever you want, basically. So definitely good for its cost. Gives you some of that early game card draw. That is a 4-cost black instant with split second, so that means that it resolves before anything else can be played or anything. So cards with split second, you can't counter them, you can't respond to them. When they're played on the stack, nothing happens until they resolve. As long as that spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that are not mana abilities. So they pretty much can't do anything until that card is resolved. And that affects you as well. You cannot respond to your own casting of that. So what VATS does, choose any number of target creatures with equal toughness. Destroy the chosen creatures. this can be used to get rid of a whole bunch of token creatures. So if your opponent is creating tons of 1/1s or 2/2s or whatever the heck, you can use this to just, poop, gone. Nope, not going to deal with that. And with Split Second, the inability for it to be countered is very, very strong. And it doesn't allow your opponents to, if they're running like a Marin deck or something like that, to sacrifice them in response to you destroying them. So, very good card. Very good card. Secure the Waste is a white X instant with create X 1/1 white warrior creature tokens. So it's pay any number of mana and you create one less soul warrior token than mana that you paid to play the spell. This is probably one of the easiest or one of the lowest cost token gen options that you can find in this deck. And the more that your ramp fires off, the higher that you can push that, the higher you can pump it, the more tokens that you can have, and it just goes and goes and goes and goes. Excellent, excellent card. Lots of synergy with Caesar, lots of fodder for the Caesar sack ability there. Anguished Unmaking, we got a 3-cost instant, exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life, so it's a target non-land permanent, and it's exiled. This gets around Indestructible. It does not get around Hexproof or Shroud, unfortunately, but it is exiled instead of going to the graveyard where it can be brought back so much easier than if it is in exile. It's also a non-land permanent. So it's not specifically a creature, and in it being a non-land permanent, you end up having a whole lot more options, and you can get rid of pretty much anything that is not a land that's bothering you in the board, as long as it doesn't have hexproof or shroud. So very powerful for a 3-cost. Here we go. We got our Wear and Tear. So again, dual cards like this. You can play one or both when you play it. You just got to pay both mana costs if you play both. And when it enters the graveyard, you don't put it back into your hand so you can cast the other one. It's when you play it, you can play one or both of them. So Wear is a 2-cost destroy target artifact, and Tear is a 1-cost white destroy target enchantment. So a lot more versatile in its removal options there. Which is very good because it doesn't lock you into one or the other. When you draw it, you can choose or you can do both. I love cards that give you a whole bunch of options, like Caesar, where you can choose what you want to do. That way, that makes your deck so much more adaptable to whatever it is, whatever scenario you find yourself in, or whatever your opponents end up pulling against you. Just having that ability to be more versatile. Whenever you draw a card and you can do a whole bunch of different things with it, you have that much more of an advantage when it comes to dealing with your opponent's board states. Moving into the artifacts, we got your typical Soul Ring, quintessential card for almost every single EDH deck. I can't think of any single situation where you would not include a Soul Ring in it unless you lost a bet or something. I don't know. But Soul Ring's absolutely fantastic. It's a 1-cost mana rock that has tap, add to colorless. It doesn't even enter tapped. Just I have never built a deck without one. I hope you don't either. Talisman of Hierarchy is a 2-cost mana rock that can either tap for colorless or it can tap for black or white and deal 1 damage to you. As I mentioned before in the Mothman deck, I'm not a huge fan of the talismans. I feel like there are so many other mana rocks out there that you can use that will give you the colorations that you need. Better ramp options and things than the talismans. I don't know. I'm biased against them. They're not my favorite. But there's Temple of or Talisman of Hierarchy. We got the Charisma bobblehead here. It's a 3-cost tap, add 1 mana of any color, and pay 4 and tap. Create X 1/1 white soldier creature tokens, where X is the number of bobbleheads you control. Activate only as a sorcery. The thing about this, there are only 2 bobbleheads in this deck. So at a maximum, you're only going to be creating 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens by paying 4, and you're not getting anything else off of that return. Like, even if you just look at the first card that we went over here, your heroic reinforcements, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens, but for the same cost as this, they also get +1/+1 and have haste. So, okay, sure, this one might be reusable, but paying 4, and that's paying 4 to get 2 tokens if you have both of your bobbleheads played on field already. I don't know. I feel like the bobbleheads kind of fall flat if they are not all in the same deck together. Moving forward here, we got the next Talisman. Talisman of Indulgence is the black-red Talisman. Again, not my favorite as far as mana rocks go. They definitely will do if you're having trouble getting your color spread. In a 3-color deck, I see it more than I do in a 2-color deck or a 1-color deck. I don't know. They're just not my favorite. And there's Talisman of Conviction, same thing, except for that's the black or the red-white version. I got Arcane Signet is a 2-cost, add 1 tap to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's identity. I love this one. Nice, simple. It's exactly like the Talismans, except for you don't take a life and you can tap it for any of your 3 colors. This is another one right up there with Soul Ring that I would say is almost quintessential in any commander deck. Strongly recommend, no matter what you're running, strongly recommend you run an Arcane Signet in there. Skull Clamp is a 1-cost equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/-1. Whenever equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards, and it has an equip cost of 1. So basically what this is you play this. This is primarily good for putting it on your tokens, your 1/1 tokens. You put it on 1/1 token, it gets -1, and it dies, and you draw 2 cards. So you pay 1, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. Is essentially how that works when you're equipping it to 1/1 count or 1/1 creatures. So that's very solid, very good. Bounces you right back and forth, gets you right up there. Draw. Killing creatures, which synergizes with Caesar. You got some other creatures in this deck that whenever a creature dies, do things. So overall, Skull Clamp is a very powerful card draw utility in here. Moving on to the next artifact, we got Survivor's Medkit is a 1-cost artifact with pay 1 and tap. Choose one that has not been chosen yet. You have options are the Stim Pack, draw a card, the Fancy Lad Snack Cakes, create a food token, which is, again, pay 2 and tap and sacrifice the food token to gain 3 life. So that's okay, I guess. And then Radaway. Target player loses all rad counters and sacrifice Survivor's Medkit. So this deck does nothing with rad counters. So the only thing that I could see of being of benefit in this deck would be the draw card. Because nothing else, I mean, draw card barely synergizes with the deck, but rad counters have nothing whatsoever to do with this deck. And it would almost do better in the Mothman deck, but at that point, I don't know why you would want to remove rad counters from yourself. So I'm not rightly sure what you would do with this card. I would definitely pull it and replace it with something better. Here's our second bobblehead. We got the Luck bobblehead here. It's a 3-cost, tap, add 1 mana of any color. Pay 1 and tap, roll X 6-sided dice, where X is the number of bobbleheads you control. So again, that's 2. Just a reminder, that's 2. So you're going to roll 2 6-sided dice at tops if you have both of them, and if you don't, then you're only going to roll 1. you're going to create a tapped treasure token for each even result. If you roll 6 exactly 7 times, you win the game. So first off, you're not going to be rolling 7 dice because there's only 2 bobbleheads. So you're only going to be rolling a maximum of 2. So that winning the game is irrelevant unless you put it in a deck with all the rest of your bobbleheads. And create a tapped treasure token for each even result. So it's a maximum of 2, paying 1 to gain, on average, 1 treasure token. Because you have a 50% chance of for each die to roll a number that will give you a treasure token. And so 50% of the time, you'll end up getting 1 treasure back. So you're paying 1 colorless to get 1 treasure token. On average, that's what your expected result on that can be. But you have a 25% chance of getting 2 treasure tokens and a 25% chance of getting 0 treasure tokens. So it's a gamble, and 50% of the time you'll break even. And I mean, I guess the argument could be made that you're not really breaking even because the treasure token can be sacked for any a mana of any color, whereas this is input of colorless and output of redeem this for 1 mana of any color. So I guess it's not that bad. But these are all just things and probabilities and statistics that you're going to want to keep in mind if you end up running this. Again, so much better in a deck if you're running all of the bobbleheads, because then you have a much higher likelihood of getting more on field. And yeah, so you have a 1 in 100 chance of drawing each of these, or 1 in 99 chance of drawing each of these cards. And as you draw cards from your deck, the chances of you drawing another bobblehead are better and better and better. But at the same time, it is still ultimately in total 1 out of 100 of your cards. And so the likelihood that you'll get both is not super great. It's not something that you would necessarily want to rely on. So again, I would pull the bobbleheads, put them all in a deck together. Martial's Anthem is the first of our enchantments in this deck. It's a 4-cost white with multi-kicker of white 1. So what that means is when you play this, you can cast it for the 4 up here, but then on top of that 4, you can pay an extra white and 1 as many times as you want. So this enchantment has creatures you control get +1/+1, and when Martial's Anthem enters the battlefield, return up to X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of times Martial's Anthem was kicked. So for each white 1 that you pay, you return 1 more creature card, target creature card, not even at random. You remove 1 creature card from your graveyard and put it onto the battlefield. And not even tapped. So that's a fantastic card, especially for given its mana cost. You can get some of your powerful essential legendaries back up on their feet real quick, and also providing a passive buff to the rest of your deck. So that is a fantastic card in this. Assemble the Legion is a 5-cost white-red enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a muster counter on Assemble the Legion, and then create a 1/1 red and white soldier creature token with haste for each muster counter on Assemble the Legion. So on your first upkeep that comes around after you play this, you're going to put a 1 counter on here, and you're going to create 1 token. Your second one, you're going to put a second counter on there, and you're going to create two tokens. 3, 3, 4, 4, so on and so forth. And so every turn, you're making more and more and more and more and more. So it'll just keep building and building and building. I would love for this card to be a 4-cost, maybe even a 3-cost. It being a 5-cost is still okay. Maybe a 3-cost would probably actually be a little bit too strong. Maybe, I don't know. I feel like there are 3 costs that are way more powerful than that. But this being a 5 cost, at the point where you're able to start casting 5 mana spells, the battlefield is going to start changing very quickly. And so being able to gain 1 or 2 tokens or something like that, you're only going to have a couple of turns probably once you get to that 5 mana cost. That's not a guarantee. That's just a prediction. And you'll have longer in more multiplayer games. This is perfectly true. If you're playing with 4 players, you're going to have more turns. If you're playing with 1 player, maybe not so much. I've always really liked this card. I feel like it could be better than it is, but definitely a good utility card to have. Vault 75 in Middle School is a 4-cost enchantment, Saga. So phase 1, exile all creatures with power 4 or greater. So we got good board state control. Note this would also hit Caesar, though, and some of your other larger creatures. It's all creatures with power 4 or greater, not just all creatures your opponents control. So that's something to keep in mind when you play this out. And then 2 and 3, put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So you don't even get these back. So if you have a creature that has power 4 or greater, and it's one that you want to keep, maybe think about not playing this until your opponent's board states become something that you can't handle. At the point where you need a board wipe, then maybe play this. But that being said, it is exile, so it's not destroy, so it'd get around indestructible, which is fantastic. And it adds 1/1 counters. You end up putting 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control. So, excuse me. All right, coming down to the last couple of cards here. Fervent Charge is a 4-cost enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Very straightforward. Group buff, attack trigger, layers up with Caesar there. Pretty cheap. It is all 3 of our colors. Very basic, but also very good, very helpful in this deck. You can with all the tokens that we're creating, being able to buff those up to +3/+3, even without any of the other cards that give them even more buffs. Just solid all the way around. Stolen Strategy is a 5-cost red enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of each opponent's library. Until end of turn, you may cast cards from among those exiled. And you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those spells. So at the beginning of your upkeep, everybody exiles the top card of their library. And then until the end of your turn, you can play them. And it doesn't matter, you can play them as though all of their mana costs were colorless. Essentially is how that works. So, yeah. Allows you to use your opponent's deck against them. Gives you a little bit of an advantage for being able to cast some more stuff from your own deck. Solid card for adding things to your board state if you have the requisite mana to be able to cast them. Wild Wasteland is a 3-cost, skip your draw step. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn, so it's very similar to this one, except for this one doesn't allow you to cheat the mana cost, and it's exile the top 2 cards of your library, but you can only play them this turn. So if you don't play them at your end step, then they're just gone. They're just exiled, and you don't get to bring them back. So I personally not a huge fan of that sort of a thing unless I'm running a deck that specializes in casting cards from exile or from anywhere other than your hand or things like that. But just as general casting utility in random decks, it's not my favorite. So that one will probably end up coming out of my final version of it. Here we go. Vault 11, Voter's Dilemma is a 4-cost saga again. This one is black-white. Phase 1, for each opponent, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Okay. Good in multiplayer, less good in single player on phase 1. If each 2 and 3, each player secretly votes for up to one creature, and then those votes are revealed. If no creature got votes, each player draws a card. Otherwise, destroy each creature with the most votes or tied for the most votes. So this is basically election of who dies, and if everybody abstains, it's group card draw. But nobody knows if everybody abstains until everybody has abstained. So that can be a little bit tricky. Very good for creating chaos. Because in this moment, nobody really knows what's going to happen or who's going to vote for what. And so this could end up hurting you. This could end up hurting your opponents. This kind of ends up becoming anybody's game. So that's just something to also keep in mind, is that can go both directions. Black Market, 5-cost enchantment. Whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on Black Market. So already we're feeding on that with sacrificing things to Caesar and destroying all of our destroy creature cards and board wipes and stuff. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add black for each charge counter on Black Market. So this can build up pretty darn fast, depending on how quickly you're sacrificing and how quickly you're killing things. And then when it does build up, you're just able to pound mana. You just end up getting a whole bunch of mana because it's cumulative, right? You don't remove those charge counters. It's just whenever it dies, you get that much more on your next pre-combat main phase, and so on and so forth. So Black Market, you can really charge that up. Lots of synergy with Caesar, with the sacrificing, and can definitely end up being a powerhouse here in this deck. Battle of Hoover Dam is a 4-cost enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you can choose NCR or Legion. If you choose the NCR option, at the beginning of your end step, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. So a finality counter, a creature with a finality counter, when it dies, it gets exiled instead of going into the graveyard or anywhere else. So that's essentially if you bring it back, and then if it dies again, it's gone and it just doesn't come back. Or choose Legion option. Whenever a creature you control dies, put 2 1/1 counters on target creature you control. So here we got some sacrifice feedback, right? So we're looking at Black Market, right? You're sacrificing things to Caesar. Well, here you're sacrificing things to Caesar, and then you're putting 2 1/1 counters. And then you're sacrificing to Caesar, and you're putting 2 1/1 counters. Or you're sacrificing to one of the other cards that's like, hey, sacrifice a creature to do this. So you're able to just build up a creature or any of your creatures with 1/1 counters whenever you sacrifice it. Or not just whenever you sacrifice it, but whenever an opponent destroys one of your target creatures or one of your creatures die in combat, all of those will trigger this, and Black Market as well. So since we do have a lot of that happening in this deck, for a 4-cost, that's pretty darn solid. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Citadel Siege. Intangible Virtue, we got a 2-cost enchantment. Creature tokens you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. So that's across the board. That's a nice, simple 2-cost. And all creature tokens, regardless of what kind of token they are, they don't tap when they attack, and they get +1/+1. In a mass token deck, token utility like this is absolutely on point to have here. Bastion of Remembrance is a 3-cost enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. There's more of that death utility. Um, Sacrifice a creature to Caesar. You're gaining life. Your opponents are losing life as you're sacrificing your stuff, and this is kind of quintessential aristocrats. So with your attack triggers, your aristocrats with the sacrificing, the creating of the tokens that you can then turn around and sacrifice to buff yourself. Um, this deck definitely, definitely just plugs right along. And that is the last of the non-land cards that we have for this deck. We did the last video we did all the creatures. This video we did all of the remaining non-land types. And in the following video, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the lands. And then we're going to decide what we're going to do with this deck as a whole. And I've actually got some pretty amazing plans for this deck. But we will go ahead and talk about that at the end of the next video. So like and subscribe. I will catch you then.